Mark started his Habitat career in 1999 as a construction manager for Habitat for Humanity in South Bend, Indiana. And talking to him earlier today, he was saying he's still getting used to the California way of doing things versus the Midwest. We move faster, although we're always late. And we're honking a lot, we're in a hurry, but that's because we're going to be late. So he said he's still kind of getting used to that. In 2006, he moved to the Americas, Georgia to accept the Director of Construction and Environmental Resources position at Habitat for Humanity International, where he provided global support and oversight to Habitat's construction operation. He's been honored with the Clarence Jordan Award for developing the Cornerstone Training Program and a hands-on construction skills training course, and the Lester M. Wolfson Award for nonfiction writing. I think that's great. Do you have a book?
No, just...
Okay, so he wrote some stuff about what he does, I guess, and there you go. I don't know, I didn't know if you had it in an article in a magazine.
It was in college work. And stuff.
Excellent. Today, Mark's going to share how Habitat overcomes the challenge of working in a volunteer organization and working with staff that has never picked up a hammer, a nail gun, put drywall up in a house, been on a roof, putting on roof tiles. How do you take all these volunteers that are different every day, pretty much? There's not usually a team that works for a week. It's like a company will bring in people who work for 4 hours or 8 hours. How do you manage a project like that when you've got folks that are different every time? You have to kind of do a quick retraining and have some professional folks there to help them out. How does that work? So with that, I would like to bring Mark up here. He's a resident of Long Beach, had a very short commute, but a very entertaining morning. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I have had an entertaining morning. I went to the wrong place for this conference, but A, they had a great breakfast buffet, and B, being from the Midwest, I was there an hour early, so I still got here on time. Hi, as you heard, I'm Mark Van Loo. I'm with the Habitat for Humanity of Greater Los Angeles. And this morning I was asked to come and just share with you about Habitat for Humanity. I'm going to focus a lot of my discussion this morning on the project management piece and how we get that done, because I think that relates a lot to many of you. But I do want to start by sharing a little bit about who we are, as you see up here, what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. So I'm going to focus quite a bit on how we do it. But we need to start from the beginning a little bit, so those of you who haven't had experience with Habitat will understand a little bit better who we are and how we got to this point. I was encouraged this morning as I was here preparing and everything, ran into several people, many of whom have already had a lot of experience with Habitat for Humanity, volunteering, in some cases serving on boards of director and things like that. So just curious, with a show of hands, I know this is a technology conference, but I'm going to go a little low tech here for a minute. And with a show of hands, how many of you have either volunteered or worked for or been involved with Habitat for Humanity at some point? Wow, great. Maybe a third of the room. So give yourselves a hand, because we really can't do what we do without folks like you. I really appreciate this opportunity to come and share with you this morning. I hope what I have to say is interesting and informative, and whether you decide at the end that, hey, I want to get involved with that Habitat thing, or whether it just provides you some insights and information you can use in your career, it's a win either way. So I will be right outside these doors here at a table, and I've got some information and things, and I'm going to hang out there all morning. So if you want to talk afterward directly with me or pick up some literature, please stop by. All right, well, let's start by going back in time a little bit. Habitat for Humanity started in 1976, was formed in 1976. It actually started prior to that. Our founders, Millard and Linda Fuller, a couple from Americus, Georgia, which How many have been to Americus, Georgia? Really? Oh, I actually have somebody. I'm surprised. Americus, Georgia is a very small rural town in southwestern Georgia, about 7 miles down the road from Plains, Georgia. Many of you probably have heard of Plains, Georgia, and know their most famous resident, Jimmy Carter. Well, Millard and Linda were on the fast track to a great life. Millard, during college, went to law school and became a lawyer, developed his own law practice. And while he was going to college, he was a very driven individual, very interested in making money, in developing business. So he, back then, before a lot of the technology we have today, started some mail order businesses while in college, and some of them were quite successful. One of the most interesting things I heard that he did was down in South Georgia, mistletoe actually grows in the trees down there. It's sort of it grows on the trees way up high. And he would actually harvest mistletoe and ship it around the country at Christmas time for folks who wanted real live mistletoe in their home. And he did many other things, many of which were successful. And he basically made his first million by the time he got out of college. He had, so as I said, he started his own law firm, had a partner, was very successful, and was really doing quite well. But everything he did, everything in his life revolved around making money and operating and growing his business. So much so that his marriage began to suffer. And finally, after trying for a long time, Linda left with, by this time they had a couple of small children. She left for a while with the children to kind of reassess and reevaluate if this was the right path. She felt completely abandoned, and Millard really didn't have time for anything but his work and and making money. So I'm making a long and interesting story as short as possible. Millard wound up realizing that what he had been devoting most of his time, energy, and passion to was not what was most important in his life. So he went and he found Linda and the kids, and they ended up at a Christian community outside of Americus, Georgia, called Koinonia Farm. That in itself is another interesting story that you should look into and read about sometime. But it was at this community that Millard really took a step back and said, all right, what do I need to do here? And he really felt a call from God that, it's not all about making money and being successful that way. That, what's important in life is what you invest in others. So he really spent some time, many months, trying to learn and understand how do you go about doing that. For a person who's totally driven by his passion for business and making money, it's quite a shift to start thinking in a whole new way. And he had to learn the skills and understand the concepts behind doing that. He was able to do that and eventually really started to seek what God was calling him to do in his life. And he looked around in rural southwest Georgia and he saw many farmers and other folks who kind of scratched out a living in deplorable conditions, living in shacks with dirt floors and gaps in the walls and all kinds of issues. And he felt a strong pull because he remembered in his own life how important home was, having a home to go to, a place to feel safe, a decent home that his folks could afford so that they could dedicate time to their family and not have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I kind of had this revelation myself when I was young. I don't know if any of you have ever had this happen, but I might have been 7 or 8 years old and I was playing at a friend's house. It's northern Indiana. It's late in the fall. It was a cold, rainy, drizzly, gloomy day, and it was almost dark. I was making my way home because it was getting close to supper time. And as I rounded the corner and walked up the block, there was nobody out, nobody around. It was almost spooky, kind of eerie feeling. And then I looked up and I saw our house. And I saw the kitchen window and the light pouring out of that window. And as I walked closer and got to the end of the driveway, I could see my mom in there preparing supper. And I stopped at the end of the driveway, even though I was cold and wet and miserable. And I waited and I kind of lingered because I knew that in 30 seconds I could be in that house and that it would be warm and I would be able to smell supper, and I was loved and accepted and taken care of. And it's that kind of feeling. I wanted to just linger there for a moment. It's almost like when you're really thirsty and you know that first sip of ice cold beverage is going to taste so good. So I lingered there, and eventually I went in. And Millard had this same kind of revelation. Home is so important. So he felt this call to make sure that everybody around the world had, at a minimum, a basic, decent place to live. So he began to work out what he at that time called partnership housing. And he felt like what the poor needed was not charity, was not a handout. What they needed was somebody to partner with them, to invest in them when no one else would. And he looked for those folks who were hardworking, who were earning some money, who could pay back a mortgage, but not a big one, and needed it to be affordable. And he worked out a plan to partner with those folks, to seek out donated money and materials, to build a home, a decent place for them to live, and to do it in a way that kept the cost down by using volunteer labor. And then when that home was completed, he would figure out how much that home cost, and he would sell that home to that family at cost, at no profit. And he would use the money that they had collected in the community to provide a loan to that person, a mortgage at 0% interest. And those factors combined made it affordable for that family to buy a home, a decent place to live. So that was the basic model for Habitat for Humanity. They did some homes in the US, in Southwest Georgia, and the model worked, and people seemed excited about it. And he started to see all of these other things, these outcomes that weren't anticipated happening when you bring people together alongside someone in need, and everybody works together to achieve a common goal. So he said, well, you know, I don't just have a vision for doing this in Georgia or even in the United States. I feel called to an international ministry to do this work. So he and Linda and the kids packed up and went to Africa. And they spent 2 years in Africa trying the model there. And they built many, many homes, and the model worked there as well. So he said, you know, if it worked in Georgia and it works in Africa, it should work anywhere in the world. So they came back home to Americus, Georgia. He had bought a house in town that he used as his law practice. He took down the law practice sign and he put up a hand-painted plywood sign that said Habitat for Humanity International Headquarters. There wasn't a whole lot to be the headquarters of at that point, but it was a start. And I should also mention at this point that in this process of figuring out how you turn yourself from somebody who chases money and success to someone who chases helping others and investing in people, he followed a principle of giving away everything that he had earned under the wrong model of life. So he and Linda were millionaires at that point, and they gave everything away to the poor. They made themselves poor during that process of figuring out what it is that they should do, relying fully on the kindness of others and the power of their faith to provide what they needed to pursue this vision and this dream. So from those humble beginnings to today, 37, 38 years, something like that later, Habitat for Humanity is now in over 90 countries around the world. We've built over 500,000 homes housing over 2 million people worldwide, most of that in the last 10 or 12 years as we're really starting to see some exponential growth around the world. And we've learned a lot in those 30-some years about how to do what we do, and we're getting better at it all the time. And people all over the world, just like yourselves, are realizing and understanding that it's the same thing that we learned many years ago about how much of a difference in a life a basic, decent, affordable home can make to a family. And I'll share a few stories about what that's meant for some families here in our area a little bit later. So that's kind of how we got to the model of Habitat and how Habitat started in 1976. I'm going to move along. Again, you know, feel free to look me up later. All my information is out here. So if you want to learn more about that, there's much more to understand. But I want to focus enough time on the how. But first, what do we do? So how do we accomplish this? What kind of things do we do to provide affordable housing? You know, Habitat's traditional model was building new single-family homes, which worked quite well in places like Georgia and Indiana and many other places around the country, and still does today. But we were kind of limited and restricted for many years. That was really all we did, was very simple, basic, decent homes and new construction, almost nothing else. But over the years, we've learned that if you're going to be successful at this, and if you're going to meet the great, great need that's out there for affordable and decent housing and shelter, you're going to have to do a lot more than that. You're going to have to work across the spectrum of providing housing and shelter. So we still do new single-family construction. We also do multifamily construction. So in places like LA and New York and Dallas and many other larger and mid-sized cities, there's a definite need and place for multifamily housing. So we do that. We also do home repairs. We realized some years back that for those folks who do own their own home, and maybe they are experiencing income difficulties, or they are seniors, or they are, have become disabled, or whatever the case might be, they may be struggling with maintaining and keeping up the home that they have, such that the roof is leaking, the windows are bad, and if left unattended to, eventually this home is not going to be livable. And I'm completely forgetting about my little thing here, so I'll let you look at that for a while, even though I'm on the next one. See, I could really use your people's help, because technology, I mean, look at me. I'm wired up. If I have a heart attack up here, just rub these two things together and I'm going to go. I'm going to go. So we realized it's often a lot cheaper and more effective to preserve an existing home and a person in that home, so that they don't end up losing that home, becoming homeless or a renter, and then needing to start the process all over again. So we do home repairs under a couple of categories. We have something we call a brush with kindness. This is very light, usually exterior repairs, where we maybe go and put a fresh coat of paint on a house and fix some minor roof leaks, or get some windows working again that have been painted shut or need new glass and things like that. And we also do a second model called critical home repairs, where this is a little more deep and costly and extensive repairs that we do, and can include interior work as well. And then last, we do advocacy, because we realized as well that it costs a lot of money to build a home, especially in a place like LA. And if we can, through our advocacy work, impact a piece of legislation that positively impacts affordable housing, with the stroke of a pen signing that paper, we can impact tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people. And how long and how much money would it take us to build for that many people? So we're working all across that spectrum now on a local, state, and national level. We also realize that as we build these homes, as we rehab these homes, that those who can least afford a wasteful, unhealthy, non-green, non-energy efficient home are low-income folks. You know, if they're paying high energy bills, if that home is built in such a way that it doesn't encourage good indoor air quality, things like that, they're going to have more sick days, they're going to miss more work, their kids are going to need more trips to the doctor, etc. So we also do everything we do very carefully. We build very high quality homes. Most of our new construction projects over the past 5-6 years have achieved LEED Silver level certification, LEED being leadership in energy and environmental design. And it's a third-party verification system that's very extensive and looks at every part of the home and its systems and makes sure that you're building a very high quality, energy efficient, sustainable, and healthy home. So I think it's great that we do that, and I think it's phenomenal that we do that with folks like yourselves and many others from the community, many of whom have no experience in building a home. And yet, we're not just throwing up shacks, we're building great, high-quality homes that everyone can be proud of. All right, so I'm going to try and catch us up on the slides here. Those are the things we do. So how do we do that? How we do it is really where I want to spend some time here. And by the way, I'm going to leave some time at the end to answer questions and things that you might have. So keep those and jot them down or something, and I'll afford a little time at the end for that. How we do it. We, first and foremost, our model calls for the partner, the family who we're partnered with, to be involved in the process. We feel it's very important for them to be invested in what's going on and what's being built in their life. So we have something we call sweat equity, and every family who receives a Habitat home puts in sweat equity. And the amount varies depending on the type of project, and from Habitat affiliate to Habitat affiliate. There are minimum requirements, but typically somewhere between 250 and 500 hours are invested by the family in being trained, educated about what it means to be a homeowner, giving them the skills that they need to maintain that home, to budget appropriately, to be able to afford that home, and also to help build that home, to come out and work alongside folks like yourselves and our staff and our team to build that home. And as they come out and they do that, and their blood, their sweat, their tears are in that home right alongside of many of yours. Not too much blood, mostly sweat and tears, happy tears. They see that house go up. They're experienced and involved in helping to create it. They know what's under that drywall. They remember that as the framing went up and the volunteers who were out over and over again giving up their Saturdays, their weekdays to help them, even though they didn't know them, they remember that those volunteers at the end of the day took Sharpie markers and they wrote on the studs messages of hope and prayers of blessing, and all of that is inside of those walls. Those walls are literally alive to them. We have homeowners who talked today about how, as they're living in their home, sometimes when they're feeling a little down or discouraged, they literally just lean up against the wall and just touch that wall. They remember those studs under there. They know what's written there. And it carries them through, you know. And because of that, because of their investment in that home and knowing and understanding what it took to create it and how involved they were, very few homeowners will allow that home to slip away. Habitat has a huge success rate, and in spite of what's going on in the greater mortgage world these days, Habitat has a less than 1% mortgage foreclosure rate around the country. So our families are very dedicated and very committed to staying in those homes. And they also, in case you're a little confused about the model, once they purchase that home from us, you know, they own that home just like you or I would purchase a home. And they can sell that home. They can do whatever they want. They can add on, remodel. They fully own that home. And very few choose to do that. Sometimes, you know, life circumstances, maybe a job out of state or family needs somewhere, or the best scenario is the family, because of having this decent and affordable place to live, has improved their circumstances and they've increased their income. And now they're able to afford a larger home or a different area that they want to live in. So we do have folks who sell and move on or move up. But most of our families, the vast majority, stay in those homes. We here in Greater Los Angeles have the honor of being the first Habitat affiliate to host the Jimmy Carter Work Project twice. The first time was in '97, and they built a community in Watts. And then the last time was in 2007, when we built two communities in San Pedro and South Central Los Angeles, as well as doing a lot of our repair programs all around the area. And when Carter came back for that 2007 build, just a couple days before arriving, we got word that he said, you know, when I'm out there, I want to take a ride through the neighborhood we built, you know, back then. And I'm sorry, I said when I was 95 that they built that. And he said, you know, it's been 12 years. I'd like to see how things are faring. Well, we have great confidence in our homeowners and everything, but none of us had been out to that community in a while. So a couple of us saddled up and rode out there, you know, just to make sure that there were no big, huge surprises. And I'm proud to say that that neighborhood is still an oasis in the middle of the Watts community. The homes are great. The yards are beautiful. The people are still there. every single homeowner was still there who moved in 12 years prior. Carter went out and met with and talked with a lot of those families and was really inspired and pleased to see the progress that that community had made. So that's the starting point of how we do what we do, is we truly partner with these folks. The second thing is we could hire everybody we need and go out and build this with professional contractors. But first of all, that would raise our cost quite high. And we would have a very difficult time keeping these houses affordable for the buyers. So we, Millard and Linda, caught that vision long ago that we not only need to partner with the family, but we need to partner with the community in which that family lives. We need to find people who are not satisfied that there is substandard housing in their community, that some people are forced to live in deplorable conditions while others are living in good shelter. And we need to find those people and we need to bring them out and give them an opportunity to come alongside these folks. So we have volunteers like yourselves who come out every day. The LA affiliate puts over 10,000 volunteers, providing over 100,000 hours of volunteer service through our sites every year now. And so we bring the partner family and the volunteers together with the resources that we've raised in the community, things like donated money, donated materials or discounted materials and services that we do need. Some things are best left to professionals to do, and we don't try and do those things with volunteer labor. So what we need from people is not skill, is not experience. What we need from them is passion and heart. I've found over and over I've been with Habitat for 13 years now, and I've led thousands and thousands of volunteers on work sites through those years. And I would rather have a group of folks who have never picked up a hammer before, but who are there for all the right reasons, with all the passion, wanting to help somebody in need, for a couple of reasons. For one, a strong passion and a willing heart will make up for a lot of lack of experience. And two, if they don't know anything, they're wide open and will listen to what you're saying. I don't know your world entirely or very well at all probably, but I can imagine that when you walk into certain businesses and whatnot, you maybe sometimes find that person in the company who considers themselves a technology expert and wants to help you help them and tell you what's going on and all that sort of thing. We kind of get that same thing sometimes. We absolutely do get a lot of skilled people who are fantastic, but sometimes we get folks who, they built a doghouse about 13 years ago and the roof still doesn't leak on it, so therefore, they know everything there is to know. And sometimes those folks are harder to work with, at least in the beginning, than those folks who, are willing and ready to listen and do exactly what we tell them to do. Probably the biggest thing that we do, that we had to learn, actually, this didn't exactly come naturally, and this, I think, will resonate with you as project managers. We have to have a strong vision and a strong sense of purpose in what we're trying to accomplish. And we have to be sure that everybody on that site every day understands that and knows where what they're doing on that day fits into that vision and that plan. That's what really motivates people. That's what really helps them understand how, when we say, okay, guys, today, you guys got the good job. Today we're going to go over here and dig this ditch. It helps them understand how digging that ditch is important and how it fits into what we're trying to accomplish. And if the site supervisors are really good and charismatic, they'll actually, build up this whole hero thing with these folks. Nobody else wants to do this, but I can tell you guys are going to do it. You guys are ready to step up and get this done. And everybody gets to feeling really good. And it's true. I mean, we actually do have that challenge sometimes. So first of all, we train our leadership. What we need in a person on our sites for our staff who are going to lead these folks and for our skilled volunteers who help us lead these inexperienced volunteers, we certainly need them to understand how to build a house. But more than that, we need them to have the right heart, the right kind of teaching mentality. Because it's not mostly about building a house that day. That's the easy part. The harder part is doing it with folks who don't know what they're doing or how to do it. And it's absolutely amazing, and sometimes it takes us a while to get through to somebody new on our team or a new skilled volunteer. Trust the process. If you spend a half an hour or an hour in the morning investing in those volunteers, teaching them what they need to know to do their little part, making sure they understand how their little part fits into the whole and is going to help get this house built. The rest of the day, you're going to get unbelievable things accomplished because they're not there for a paycheck. They're not there to get through their 8 hours as quickly as possible, you know, and then go home and do what they really love to do. They're there doing what they really love to do. Whatever their day job is, they're out here today because they want to be and because they want to help, and they're excited about that. And when that comes together with the right bit of investment in the morning, what'll happen that day is phenomenal. So I'll take a little step aside for a moment and share with you my very first day on the job of Habitat for Humanity in South Bend, Indiana. I didn't know anything about Habitat. I was a self-employed remodeler. I was kind of like Millard. I was always trying to be successful and make a lot of money in my remodeling company, and I was doing okay. I was making a nice living. And through my church, we decided to get involved in this Habitat project. I didn't know anything about it. Went to some planning meetings as a volunteer from our church, and I liked what I saw. I mean, I liked what was going on and thought, yeah, I can do this. I've got skills I can bring to the table. I was one of those annoying people who figured they knew everything and really didn't understand the Habitat model and the other softer skills you need to be successful there. Well, after that project, the staff of the affiliate must have liked a little of what they saw, and they came to me and said, our construction manager's leaving, would you be willing to come on board and do that? And at first I said no. I was quite happy with my self-employment and my nice little remodeling business. But something kept pulling on my heart. After the project was done, I missed what I had been a part of and couldn't shake it. Eventually, long story short, again, I went back and I said, I'll take the job. So they said, okay, great, when can you start? I said, how about give me a month or so to wrap things up? And they said, how about next week? All right, if you really need me, I guess I can make it work. So I show up on Monday, and it's the first day of a blitz build. If you read my little bio thing, you might have caught a glimpse of what a blitz build is in Habitat. We started Monday morning at 8 o'clock with nothing but a foundation. And on Friday at noon, we had a house complete, ready to move into, landscaped, painted, carpeted, everything done. And the outgoing construction manager met me at the site Monday morning, and he said, okay, here's how it's going to work this week. I'm going to run and get all the stuff we need every day as things pop up, and you stay on the site and keep everything going. I was too green to know what I was getting into. But with a group of volunteers, now in this case, this was a group that stayed the whole week, all 5 days. And they built the house from start to finish. So I had the advantage of having the same 30 to 35 people every day. I was blown away. I really didn't know what I was doing, but thankfully there were a number of skilled volunteers who we call them rusty nails. There are many of them are retired gentlemen who come out and they give us sometimes 40 plus hours a week, week after week of volunteer service because they love what we do and they're able to use their skills. So they really kept the project going, and I was able to just sort of play damage control, but also observe this process unfold. And while it was a rough way to start out my career in Habitat, it was also very good because it opened my eyes to what's possible. I saw kind of one of the extremes of Habitat in that first week, and therefore after that, everything else seemed entirely possible. When you watch a house rise before your eyes in 4.5 days, and it was not without its bumps and grinds, and it was not without challenges, and not everything went perfectly. But at the end of the week, we had a perfect house sitting there. And we cleaned up at noon and came back at 1, and we had a dedication ceremony, and we handed over those keys to the partner family who had been working for several months to accomplish their 500 hours of sweat equity with us. And when I listened to them and saw what this meant in their life, that was it. I mean, I knew this is where I want to spend my life. So we are able to accomplish unbelievable things, wonderful things, when we put all of these things together. So let me kind of walk you through what a day looks like, and let me check my time here just so I stay on track. Okay, it's going fast. I'm glad I didn't promise not to go long. No. Everybody walks up in the morning. You know, you stand up in front of the crowd who are all there and very eager to get going, and everybody's looking at you, and it can be intimidating and daunting, but you see in their eyes this eagerness, this passion, this hope of what they're going to be able to accomplish. They're also very nervous and scared and don't know how they're going to contribute when they have no skills. And you know, we spend some time in the first few minutes laying out what it is we want to accomplish that day, what their particular piece of it is going to mean and what it's going to look like. We spend a good bit of time on safety because these folks have not done this before. It can be a very dangerous environment. So we make sure they understand general safety rules as well as the specifics for that day. And then we start dividing folks up into small work groups. And we already have and have identified who our leadership is going to be. Sometimes it's staff, sometimes it's our skilled volunteers. And we start breaking them off into groups, and then the leader of that group starts diving deep into what they're going to do. And we make sure that what they're going to do is in very manageable chunks. So if we're hanging drywall on a particular day, this group of 5 people plus a leader, they have bedroom number 3. And their responsibility for that day is to get the drywall done and up in bedroom number 3. Now, we always make sure that what we give them can be accomplished, and usually can be accomplished in less time than they need, and therefore they're ready to go on to something else before the end of the day. But those are all important things, elements to a successful workday. If you saddle people with far more than they can possibly get done, set unrealistic expectations, don't share with them, you know, how this integrates in the greater whole. People get discouraged and people feel like they've failed. We need everybody at the end of the day walking away from our site proud of what they did, understanding how they've accomplished something great that's contributing to this project. I think that really applies to any project management anywhere, whether you're dealing with volunteers, staff, or clients, whatever. We check in frequently. We have people whose sole job it is to stay at 10,000 feet, to not be so in the weeds on the project that they don't see what's going wrong. A great example is when you're putting siding on a house and you're running horizontal lap siding up the side of a house. It's very easy for that siding to start getting off. Think about it. You have, what we typically do is we'll line up 5 or 6 people down that wall, and each person is responsible for the 4 or 5 feet in front of them. And as they start putting that siding, well, this person's pulling a little bit higher on their piece than the person at the other end. And next thing you know, that siding starts doing this. And if you're right in front of that house, if all you can see is your 4 or 5 feet, you don't see that. So we have people who wander and walk, and they get back. They go out to the road and look at the project from a distance. They climb up on scaffolding and on ladders and see it from a different perspective. They lay on the ground and look up at it. All of these perspectives are important to keep a project going right. There's nothing more demotivating than having a group get to the last course or two and realize that from one end of the house to the other, they're off by 3 inches. Because the only correction for that is to take it all back down to the point where it started going wrong and rebuild it back up. And I've had to do that, unfortunately. We're not always perfect, and we don't always catch it. So that scenario gets repeated many, many times over as we go through a project. And I think, again, there's some lessons to be learned for how you conduct any project and doing project management. And it's having those folks, or at least a person whose job it is to stay out at 10,000 feet and make sure that they're keeping an eye on the big picture so that things don't go wrong, or at least not as wrong, and folks don't get demotivated around it. Time is getting short, so I want to definitely have a few minutes for any questions there might be. So I'm going to move to the last section because this is really what it boils down to, and it's why we do it. At the bottom line, I was speaking with someone this morning who has had quite a bit of involvement in Habitat at an affiliate up in British Columbia. And she was sharing about the evolution of a Habitat affiliate from being a very small, almost sometimes entirely volunteer-run organization with a board of directors who are very involved in the operation of the affiliate, to growing and getting bigger and transitioning to a more of a governance board and having staff and all of the growing pains that come with that. And sometimes affiliates can get out of whack, can lose sight of why we do what we do. And they start allowing folks who are there for the wrong reasons to take over. And I've seen affiliates who are struggling where it's really just a social club. It's a place because people like getting together and having coffee, and they want to inflict their own views and their own ways on that affiliate. And at the bottom of it all is not our main goal, which is to partner with hardworking, well-deserving families and helping them achieve the dream of home ownership. It's serving their own needs and their own desires. And that will poison an affiliate very quickly. We always have to keep sight of why we're doing all this. Why are we raising millions and millions of dollars every year? Why are we working countless hours to develop partnerships with material suppliers and vendors and folks like yourselves to come out and help us volunteer on the sites to get these homes built? Why are we investing hours and hours and hours in these families that we partner with to prepare them for home ownership? It's to achieve that goal, which is helping folks like some of the folks you see on our screen here. We work all over the world in very diverse cultures with people from all walks of life, with every kind of situation you can imagine. And some of the stories that I've heard and seen firsthand in my work, whether in Indiana, in greater Los Angeles, and around the world. I remember a family who they couldn't find a place to rent that was affordable. They looked and looked, and they finally found a woman who was willing to rent part of her home. It wasn't really a separate space. It was a part of the same home that she lived in. And she said, okay, I'll rent to you, but you get this one large room. That's all the space you get in the house. You can only use the kitchen during certain hours. So they had a very short amount of time in the morning and then in the evening to be able to use, because there was only one kitchen in the house. The bathroom that they were allowed to use was restricted also to certain times. Imagine that. Their daughter, their young daughter, I think she was around 7 at the time, was wheelchair bound. But the woman was afraid that the wheels of the wheelchair would tear up the flooring in the house, so she wouldn't allow them to bring it in. So they had to leave the wheelchair outside and carry their daughter in and out every day. Of course, as you might imagine, somebody stole the wheelchair at one point, and then they didn't have anything for a while. They were a Habitat partner family who are now living in their own home, and they can use the kitchen and the bathroom anytime they want. And they have sufficient space, and they have a ramp so that their daughter can be more independent now she's older, and she can get in and out of the house and get throughout the house and share in the life of the family. We have seen situations where a woman put her infant child to bed one night living up in South Central Los Angeles in a particularly bad area. She couldn't let her older children play outside at all because to go outside was literally like stepping in a war zone, especially at night after dark. So she had to keep her kids in the house all the time. I mean, I don't know about you, but I grew up, relishing my time outdoors, being able to run around and play and climb trees and all of that. And her kids really didn't get that experience because of the dangers. She put her infant child to bed one night in the crib and went back in the living room, and a little bit later heard some shooting. And as she had trained her kids, everybody instantly hit the floor. Imagine that, growing up to be trained about that. And when the shooting subsided, she ran into the bedroom where her infant child was laying, and there was a bullet hole through the wall just above the crib. So one of the bullets came right through the wall and went maybe a few inches above the rails of the crib that her child was laying in. These are just a couple of the countless stories and situations we see that folks are living in right here. In other parts of the world where housing and housing quality is on a whole different scale. If people are lucky to have anything at all, they have shelters that are pieced together with whatever they can find and dirt floors. And I've witnessed people who live literally on a gigantic dump. They build their shelters there because their job and the way they make their pittance of an income is to scour through that dump and find whatever kind of recyclables and anything usable that they can trade in for a few cents. So the need is great here as well as abroad. We need everybody's help. We need money, we need volunteers, we need expertise. My affiliate right now here in Greater Los Angeles, we're constantly moving more into using technology as part of our work, our project management, the way we do our business to make us more efficient, to keep our costs down, to do a better job of communicating. And it's a struggle for us. We can't always afford to pay the going rate for folks to come in and help us structure systems and learn the new things that we need to learn. So we need all of those kinds of things, and I don't want to stand here with all of our needs, but if this stories and this bit of information about who we are, what we do, and how we do it has resonated with you at all this morning, if you've been involved in the past but not for a while and this has kind of sparked your interest again, we'd love to see you. We'd love to hear from you and see if there's a place that you might fit in. I guarantee there is. We'll make sure of that. Again, time's getting very short here, so are there any questions, anything anybody would like? Yes?
Yeah, what is the wait list for potential homeowners?
The question is, what is the wait list for potential homeowners? And it does vary a lot by which Habitat affiliate and what's going on in their particular world. For us here in Greater Los Angeles, it's been very, very short. In fact, we were lucky to get a very large HUD grant about 2.5 years ago that enabled us to buy foreclosed properties all around the community and then rehab those into great high-quality homes for partner families. And we were working very hard to get enough families to fulfill all those homes because, again, we want to make sure that we're getting folks who are truly ready to be homeowners and are capable of being successful. And so not everybody who applies ends up being accepted and able to partner with us. So folks have literally been able to join our program, and if they can work hard on their sweat equity and get it done quickly, they can go from applicant to homeowner in as little as 6 or 7 months total time. And that's just because of the time it takes to, for them to do their sweat equity hours and work through our program. But it does vary. There are times when, folks have to wait a little while. Typically, their time in our program from being accepted to actually getting and closing on their home is usually not ever more than maybe a year to a year and a half. And again, it depends a lot on them and how quickly they are able to work and get their sweat equity. Any other questions? Yes?
I would think that teamwork is absolutely critical. Do you have any guidelines or any training that you give volunteers on how to behave culturally or how to get along or how to work well?
So the question is, teamwork is obviously very important, and how do we communicate what's important about working as teams to folks, our volunteers who are new and don't have a lot of experience. That is part of what we communicate, and it really boils down to, you're going to be working alongside 4 or 5, 6 other folks today in your small group, and you may not know these folks, but you're going to get to know them throughout the day. Approach everything with a can-do, open attitude. How can I help? What can I do? Don't let pride get in the way, but just be a part of what needs to be done, be willing to accept and do whatever the group needs to do to accomplish their goal for the day. And that'll go a long way toward making this small group and the larger group successful. People really get that. And again, because they're so open and don't have a lot of preconceived notions about how things are going to go that day, they really are willing to just step in and do what's needed to get it done. In fact, I find repeatedly, much more so than even our employees are sometimes, who have a little different motivation sometimes. Yes?
What about, every team sort of has one, no matter what, a difficult person or someone who's not getting everything that you're saying? I mean, every project has that. What's your workaround?
Well, I'll start with the extreme and say that it is absolutely possible to fire a volunteer. But we certainly don't want that. So, you know, we do teach our staff and some of our volunteer leadership conflict resolution skills. You know, we've gotten some help from outside folks who have that expertise and have come in and done training with us to help us understand, you know, how to deal with those situations, how to try and move it back to a successful scenario when somebody is being like that. You know, if we're not able to move them in the right direction within the group, you know, the next step is to ask them to step aside with you for a minute and have a one-on-one conversation to make sure that they understand how a lot of people don't get how what we do in our scenario, our situation is different than many other situations you're in. They want to bring their work skills that they use with, you know, their subordinates and other things to a volunteer-driven habitat job site, and it doesn't work that way exactly. So, you know, and then worst case scenario, if we just can't get them turned around and understand, you know, we will ask them to step aside because, you know, we have to focus on the greater good and that they're just not really ready at this point to be a habitat volunteer.
I think that's our time.
That's our time. So I will be out back again, as I say, here at the table, so I'd be happy to talk to any of you one-on-one. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that was informative.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks
Thank
on
you.
behalf of the